The sound of the bolt sliding home was the sound of Sarah's destiny being stolen from her. People say the moon goddess pairs souls with divine wisdom, choosing mates that complete one another. But locked away in a cellar while her sister wore her dress to claim what should have been hers, Sarah understood that even sacred bonds could be twisted by those desperate enough to defy them. What Sarah couldn't know, what she had no way of knowing as she pressed her palms flat against those frigid stone walls, was that the Alpha King could sense her heartbeat from 3 floors up, and that he was about to tear through every obstacle between them to reach her. Music drifted down through the floorboards, its beauty a mockery. She struggled to steady her breathing as another surge of pain rolled through her chest. The mate bond was pulling at her, a golden thread wound tight around her heart, tugging insistently toward something. Someone above her head, toward the mating ceremony she should be, attending toward the alpha she was meant to meet. But it hadn't always been this way. There was a time when Sarah had believed she belonged in this house, in this pack, in this world. She remembered the day everything shifted. She'd been 12 years old, standing in this very house as her father introduced his new wife. Vivian had smiled at her then, a smile that never touched her eyes, and Sarah had been too young, too desperate for a mother's love after losing her own to recognize the calculation behind it. "You'll have a sister now," her father had said, pulling a younger girl forward. Celeste had been 10, beautiful even then, with golden hair and the kind of confidence that came from always being wanted. "I expect you girls to be kind to each other." For 2 years, Sarah had tried. She'd braided Celeste's hair for pack gatherings. She'd helped her with her schoolwork. She defended her from bullies, even though Celeste never seemed to need defending. And when their father died, in a border skirmish, leaving them both in Vivian's care, Sarah had believed they were in it together. She'd been so wrong. "You're making Celeste look bad," Vivian had told her on Sarah's 15th birthday, after Sarah had successfully shifted for the first time in front of the pack. "Your father may have had alpha blood in his line, but you need to remember your place now. This family's future depends on Celeste making a good match. Your job is to support her, not outshine her." Sarah had tried to do exactly that. She'd made herself smaller, quieter, less visible. She'd stopped shifting in public. She'd worn plain dresses while Celeste wore silk. She'd sat in the back at gatherings while Celeste held court in the center of attention. But somehow, it was never enough. "Please," she'd begged her stepmother just hours ago, her voice breaking on the word. "Please don't do this. The bond. I can feel it. My mate is coming tonight. If I'm not there." Vivian's smile had been cold as winter frost. "If you're not there, your sister will take your place. Celeste is beautiful, accomplished, everything an alpha could want." She'd stepped closer, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper. "You're just the orphan stepdaughter I was forced to take in when your father died. Did you really think I'd let you ruin this opportunity? Do you know what kind of alpha is coming tonight?" The cellar door had slammed shut before Sarah could respond, the heavy bolt sliding into place with terrible finality. Then her stepmother's footsteps, retreating up the stairs without a single backward glance. That had been 3 hours ago. 3 hours of listening to the preparations above. The laughter, the music, the sounds of a celebration she should be part of feeling the mate bond grow stronger and more insistent with each passing minute, like a living thing inside her chest that was slowly tearing her apart, knowing that somewhere up there her fate was being stolen by the only family she had left. Sarah had spent the first hour crying, The second hour she screamed until her throat was raw, pounding on the door until her hands were bruised and bloody. The third hour she'd spent in numb silence, sliding down the wall to sit in the dust and darkness, trying to accept that this was how her story ended. She'd tried everything to escape. The door was solid oak, reinforced with iron bands that her father had installed decades ago when this cellar was used for storage. The small window near the ceiling was too high and too narrow for even her slight frame to squeeze through. She'd screamed until her voice gave out, but the music drowned out every cry. The nearest neighbors were too far away to hear, and anyone close enough to help was at the ceremony. This is it, she thought, resting her head against the stone. This is how I lose everything. Another surge of pain hit her, stronger this time, radiating through her chest like liquid fire. The mate bond was protesting, confused by her absence, reaching out desperately for the connection it was supposed to make. Somewhere above, her true mate was searching for her, drawn by the same invisible thread that was tearing her apart from the inside. Through the floorboard, she heard Vivian's voice, artificially sweet and practiced. Your Majesty, may I present my daughter, Celeste? Your Majesty. Sarah's heart stopped. The Alpha wasn't just any Alpha. He was the Alpha King himself, the most powerful wolf in the territories, the ruler whose authority was absolute, whose mate would become Luna Queen of the entire supernatural world, and her sister was about to present herself as that mate. Stand. A male voice, deep and resonant, carrying command in every syllable. Even through wood and stone, Sarah could feel the power in it, could feel her wolf respond with instinctive recognition. Let me see you. There was a pause. Sarah pressed her ear to the floor, straining to hear over her own thundering heartbeat. You're not her. His words were flat, certain, final. Where is my mate? Sarah's breath caught. He knows. The Alpha King knew Celeste wasn't his mate. But how? They'd never met before tonight. Unless he can feel the bond too, Sarah realized. Unless it's pulling at him the same way it's pulling at me. I don't understand, Your Majesty. Celeste's voice trembled convincingly, the tone she always used when she wanted something from someone. I'm Vivian's daughter of the Moonstone Pack. I don't care whose daughter you claim to be. The temperature in the room seemed to drop with his words. You are not the woman the moon goddess chose for me. I can sense my mate nearby, but she is not you. A pause, then more sharply. Where is she? There is no one else, Your Majesty, Vivian interjected smoothly, and Sarah could picture her stepmother's practiced expression of concerned confusion. Celeste is my only daughter of mating age. Perhaps the bond is simply, do not presume to tell me what I feel. The rage in those words made the floorboards vibrate. Sarah felt it through the bond too, a dark, violent fury that should have terrified her, but instead made her wolf surge to the surface, responding to the call of her mate's anger with approval. Yes, her wolf seemed to say, this is what an alpha should be. My mate is close. I can sense her heartbeat, her fear. Another pause, heavy with threat. And if you've hidden her from me, you will learn why lesser alphas fear to challenge my rule. Sarah's breath came faster. He could sense her. Even through the stone and wood separating them, he could feel her presence, feel her fear. The mate bond was stronger than she'd ever imagined possible. Call to him, her wolf urged, clawing at her consciousness. Let him know where we are. But Sarah's throat was too raw from hours of screaming, too tight with fear and desperate hope. She could barely manage a whisper now, let alone a shout that would carry through the ceiling. Then she remembered her father's lessons from before he died and left her in Vivian's care. He'd been a beta, strong and respected, with alpha blood in his lineage going back generations, and he'd taught Sarah things about wolf abilities that most never learned. The mate bond is sacred, he'd told her once, when she was young enough to still believe in happy endings. It's stronger than any magic, any barrier. If you're ever in danger and your mate is near, you can push your need through the bond itself. It will find them. It will always find them. Sarah closed her eyes and reached for the golden thread in her chest. It was there, thrumming with energy, pulsing with the same rhythm as a heartbeat that wasn't her own. She grabbed hold of it with her consciousness and pulled, pushing every ounce of her desperation and fear and hope through the connection. I'm here. I'm below you, locked away in the cellar. Please, please find me. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Above her something roared. Not a human sound, but a wolf's fury voiced through a man's throat. The music cut off abruptly. People screamed. Furniture crashed with sounds that shook dust from the ceiling. Where? The Alpha King's voice had gone guttural, barely human, resonating with a power that made every wolf in the house submit instinctively. Where is she? Your Majesty, please. You're not making sense. Vivian's protests cut off with a choking sound. This is the last time I ask nicely. Where is my mate? Silence. Then quietly, reluctantly. The cellar. But she's not fit to... The words ended in a crash so loud it shook the entire house. Footsteps thundered overhead, moving toward the back of the building, toward the cellar entrance. Sarah scrambled backward as the door at the top of the stairs exploded inward. Wood splintered, with a sound like thunder. The iron bolt, the heavy reinforced bolt that had held her prisoner, tore from the frame as if it were paper, the screws ripping through solid oak like they were embedded in butter, and silhouetted against the lamplight from above stood the largest man Sarah had ever seen. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that nearly filled the doorway. Dark hair fell to his collar, and his eyes, God, his eyes burned with gold fire, lit from within by his wolf. They locked onto her with an intensity that stole her breath, and she felt the mate bond snap into place fully. The sensation drove them both to their knees. Sarah gasped, her hands clutching at her chest as the golden thread between them solidified into something real and permanent and utterly overwhelming. It was like every nerve ending in her body had suddenly connected to his, like she could feel his rage and his relief and his desperate need all tangled together with her own emotions until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. He was down the stairs in seconds, moving with impossible speed for someone his size, his boots barely touching the steps. When he reached her, his hands were gentle as they cupped her face, despite the violent fury still radiating from him in waves. "You," he breathed, his thumbs tracing the tear tracks on her cheeks with devastating tenderness. "I felt you calling. I felt your fear." His expression darkened, gold bleeding into the whites of his eyes as his wolf rose closer to the surface. "They locked you down here during the ceremony. They tried to steal your place." Sarah couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stare at him. This magnificent, terrifying alpha, who'd torn through a reinforced door like it was nothing, who'd known instantly that Celeste wasn't his mate, who'd come for her with the kind of single-minded determination that made her wolf purr with deep satisfaction. "I'm sorry," she finally managed, her voice hoarse and broken. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I tried to—" "You have nothing to apologize for." His hands were still cradling her face, his touch impossibly gentle for someone who'd just destroyed a door with his bare hands. The ones who did this will answer for it. But first, he pulled back slightly, his golden eyes scanning her body with an intensity that felt almost physical. "Are you hurt? Did they harm you?" "Just locked me in, they didn't—" Sarah swallowed hard, trying to make her brain work through the overwhelming sensation of the mate bond. "My stepmother wanted Celeste to take my place. She's been planning this for weeks, I think. I didn't realize until today when she told me I wasn't allowed to attend the ceremony." The growl that rumbled through his chest was felt more than heard, a vibration that made the air itself seem to tremble. She locked her own daughter in a cellar to prevent her from meeting her true mate? "Stepdaughter," Sarah corrected quietly, the old pain of that distinction rising up despite everything. "My father was her second husband. He died 2 years ago. Since then, she's made it very clear that I'm an obligation she tolerates, nothing more." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes, something that reminded Sarah that this man was the Alpha King for a reason, that his power wasn't just political but primal. "Not anymore." He held out his hand. "Stand up. Let me see you properly." Sarah's legs shook as she rose, suddenly aware of how she must look. Her dress was old and plain, the same one she'd worn to pack gatherings for the past 3 years, because Vivian refused to buy her anything new. Her hair had come loose from its braid, falling in tangled waves around her face. She had dust on her clothes, and tear stains on her cheeks, and blood on her hands from pounding on the door. But when he looked at her, it was like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "Sarah," she whispered, because he needed to know her name. "My name is Sarah Ashwood." "Jasper," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "My name is Jasper Blackriver, and you, Sarah Ashwood, are the most stunning woman I have ever laid eyes on." Heat flooded her cheeks. "I look terrible. I'm covered in dust, and you look like mine." The possessiveness in his tone made her wolf sit up and take notice, preening under the attention. "Like the other half of my soul that I've been searching for my entire life." He held out his hand, and Sarah saw that it was trembling slightly. This powerful alpha who'd just torn through a door was shaking as he offered his hand to her. "Come, we have a ceremony to finish, and several people upstairs who need to learn what happens when they try to come between an alpha and his mate." Sarah took his hand, and the moment their palms touched, the mate bond sang. It was like completing a circuit, energy flowing between them that made her gasp, made her knees weak, made everything in the world suddenly make perfect sense. Jasper's eyes fluttered closed briefly, his grip tightening. "I felt you hours ago," he said quietly, his voice rough. "When I entered the territory, I knew my mate was close, knew the moon goddess had finally blessed me. When I arrived, and you weren't at the ceremony, I thought perhaps you were running late." His jaw clenched. "Then they presented that girl, and I knew something was wrong. The bond was pulling me toward this house, but not toward her." He started up the stairs, keeping her hand firmly in his grip protective and possessive in equal measure. "When I asked where you were, your stepmother tried to insist there was no one else. That's when I knew they'd hidden you, and when you called to me through the bond—" He stopped on the stairs, turning to look at her with eyes that burned. "I have never felt rage like that. Pure, incandescent fury that anyone would dare keep my mate from me." They emerged into the kitchen where the destruction was immediately apparent. The door Jasper had torn through lay in splinters across the floor. A section of the wall had cracks radiating from where he'd apparently punched through it to reach the cellar entrance faster. The doorframe itself was bent at an angle that shouldn't be possible without supernatural strength. "I may have overdone it," he admitted, following her gaze. "I wasn't thinking clearly. All I knew was that you were down there, afraid and alone, and every instinct I had was screaming at me to get to you. I'm glad you did." Sarah squeezed his hand, marveling at how perfectly hers fit in his. "I was starting to think I'd be down there all night, that by the time anyone found me, the ceremony would be over and your sister would have stolen your life." Jasper's expression went hard again. "That will never happen. You are my mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. No one, and I mean no one, can take that from you." They walked through the house toward the front parlor where the ceremony had been taking place. Sarah could hear voices, anxious and confused, talking over each other in rising panic. As they approached, the conversation cut off abruptly. Jasper pushed open the door, and every eye in the room turned to them. The scene was chaos. The ceremonial altar had been knocked askew. Several potted plants lay shattered on the floor, and standing in the center of it all were Vivian and Celeste, both looking pale and terrified. Behind them, a group of wolves in formal attire, the Alpha King's guard, Sarah realized, stood at attention, their expressions carefully neutral, but their eyes tracking Jasper's every movement. "Your Majesty," Vivian began, her voice trembling in a way Sarah had never heard before. "I can explain." "Explain what?" Jasper's voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "Explain how you locked my mate in a cellar during our mating ceremony. Explain how you tried to pass off your daughter as the moon goddess's choice. How you were perfectly willing to defy sacred law for your own gain." "I didn't know." Vivian's facade cracked, desperation bleeding through her practiced composure. "How was I supposed to know Sarah was your mate? She's nobody, nothing. She has no rank, no prospects, no—" She caught herself, but too late. "No value?" Jasper finished coldly. Vivian's silence was answer enough. "Let me make something very clear." Jasper pulled Sarah forward, positioning her slightly in front of him, his hand still firmly holding hers. "This is my mate. This is your future queen, and you try to lock her away like trash." The room fell into stunned silence. Sarah felt the weight of every stare, saw the shock on Celeste's face, the fury and fear warring in Vivian's expression. But more than that, she felt Jasper behind her, solid and unmovable, like a mountain at her back. "Under pack law," Jasper continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "interfering with a mate bond is grounds for banishment. Attempting to defraud an alpha, especially the Alpha King, carries a penalty of permanent exile from all pack territories." Vivian's face went from red to white. "You can't. This is my home, my pack. You have no right. I have every right. I am the Alpha King. My word is law, and I will not allow those who tried to harm my mate to remain unpunished." He looked past her to one of his guards, a tall man with graying temples and the bearing of a career soldier. "Captain Reese, escort Vivian Ashwood and her daughter Celeste to the territory border. They have until sunrise to gather their belongings. After that, they are officially exiled from all Packlands under my protection." "No," Celeste finally found her voice, her carefully cultivated poise shattering. "You can't do this. We didn't mean—" "You locked my mate in a cellar." Jasper's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, but it cut through the room like a blade. "You tried to steal her fate, and you did mean it. You knew exactly what you were doing. The only thing you didn't anticipate was that I would be able to sense her despite your deception." He stepped forward, pulling Sarah with him, and the crowd parted like water. Let me be absolutely clear. My mate could have died down there if she'd had a medical emergency. If there had been a fire, if the house had collapsed, she would have been trapped with no way to call for help. You put her life at risk for your own ambition. His voice rose, filling the room. That is unforgivable. Sarah watched as the reality of their situation finally sank in for both Vivian and Celeste. The guards were already moving forward, their expressions impassive but firm. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a sentence being carried out. Captain Reese will escort you to gather your things, Jasper repeated. You have 1 hour. Anything you cannot carry is forfeit. This house and all its contents now belong to Sarah Ashwood as compensation for what you've done. Vivian opened her mouth to protest, took one look at Jasper's expression and closed it again. She turned and stalked from the room, her spine rigid with fury and humiliation. Celeste trailed behind her, tears streaming down her face. When they were gone, Jasper finally released Sarah's hand, only to wrap his arms around her instead, pulling her back against his chest. The embrace was protective and possessive in equal measure, and Sarah felt something inside her chest that had been tight for years finally loosen. I'm sorry, he murmured into her hair. I know that was your family, or what passed for family. They stopped being my family when my father died. Sarah leaned into his warmth, feeling the tension drain from her body. Vivian made it clear I was a burden. Celeste treated me like a servant. This house stopped feeling like home a long time ago. Then we'll make you a new home. Jasper turned her around to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. The ceremony was interrupted, but we can complete it now if you're willing. I know this has been overwhelming. I know we've only just met, but the mate bond is real, Sarah finished softly, lifting her hand to touch his chest, feeling his heart beating steady and strong under her palm. I can feel it. I've felt it since you arrived, pulling me toward you. And when you came through that door, when I saw you for the first time. She paused, trying to find the words. I've never believed in love at first sight, but this, whatever this is, it feels right. It feels like coming home. Jasper's expression softened, the fury that had been simmering beneath his surface finally banking. The mate bond is a gift from the moon goddess. It doesn't guarantee love immediately, but it guarantees compatibility. We're meant to fit together, to complete each other. The love comes with time, with trust, with the choice to build something together. I want that, Sarah said, surprised by the certainty in her own voice. I want to choose you. I want to complete the ceremony and see where this bond takes us. The 2021 smile that crossed his face transformed him from terrifying to breathtaking. Then let's begin again, properly this time. He turned to address the room, which still held a dozen witnesses who'd been frozen in shock throughout the confrontation. Thank you all for your patience. We will now complete the mating ceremony between myself and my true mate, Sarah Ashwood. If there are any objections, speak now. Not a single voice rose in protest. Jasper led Sarah to the altar, which his guards had already righted. The ceremonial candles were relit, casting warm light across them both. An elderly wolf named Magnus, the pack elder who served as officiant for all royal ceremonies, stepped forward with his ceremonial staff, his weathered face showing a mixture of shock and approval. Alpha King Jasper Blackriver, Magnus intoned, his voice surprisingly strong for his age. Do you accept Sarah Ashwood as your true mate, chosen by the moon goddess to stand at your side through all trials and triumphs? I do, Jasper said, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. "Sarah Ashwood," Magnus continued, "do you accept Jasper Black River as your true mate, to honor the bond the moon goddess has forged between you, to stand as his equal and his partner?" Sarah's voice came out clear and strong, surprising even herself. "I do." "Then by the power granted to me by the moon goddess and pack law, I declare this bond recognized and sealed." Magnus raised his staff. "What the goddess has joined, let no one tear asunder." The mate bond, which had been humming between them since Jasper first found her in the cellar, suddenly blazed to life with new intensity. Sarah gasped as it settled into place, no longer pulling or aching, but simply present, a part of her now, as natural as breathing. Jasper pulled her close and kissed her. The kiss was gentle at first, almost tentative, as if he was afraid of overwhelming her. But when Sarah rose up on her toes and kissed him back with equal fervor, his control slipped, his hands tangled in her hair, his body pressed against hers, and the kiss deepened into something that made her wolf howl with satisfaction, and every witness politely avert their eyes. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jasper rested his forehead against hers. "Mine," he breathed. "Finally, after all these years of waiting, you're mine." "Yours," Sarah agreed, her voice shaky with emotion and desire. "And you're mine too. That's how this works, right?" He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "That's exactly how this works. Equal partners, which means you get a say in everything from here on out." He pulled back slightly to look at her, starting with, "Would you like to stay here tonight and pack your things? Or would you prefer to come to the palace immediately?" Sarah looked around the parlor, seeing it with new eyes. This house had been her prison for 2 years, the place where she'd been locked away to have her fate stolen, where every room held memories of feeling small and unwanted. "I don't want to spend another night here," she said firmly. "Anything important, I can send for later. Right now, I just want to be somewhere that feels safe." "Then the palace it is." As they prepared to leave, several of the witnesses approached to offer congratulations. Sarah recognized a few of them, members of her father's old pack who'd attended out of respect for what he'd been, who'd watched her grow up but never quite known how to help her after he died. "Your father would be proud," one of them, a grizzled old beta named Garrett, told her quietly, his eyes suspiciously bright. "He always said you had steel in your spine, even when you were small. Looks like he was right." The words brought fresh tears to Sarah's eyes, but these were different from the ones she'd shed in the cellar. These were tears of relief, of vindication, of finally being seen. Jasper's hand found hers again as they walked out into the night, his guards falling into formation around them with practiced efficiency. Carriages waited in the drive, the royal crest emblazoned on their sides in silver and black. "I have questions," Sarah said, as Jasper helped her into the lead carriage, his hand steady at her elbow. "So many questions about being queen, about pack politics, about what's expected of me." "And I'll answer everyone," Jasper promised, settling beside her with easy grace. The carriage dipped slightly under his weight. "But not tonight. Tonight, you've been through enough. Tonight we rest, and tomorrow we begin figuring out everything else." The carriage jolted into motion, carrying them away from the house where Sarah had been imprisoned, toward a future she'd never imagined. She leaned against Jasper's shoulder, feeling the steady warmth of him, the solid reality of the mate bond connecting them. "Thank you," she whispered, "for breaking down the door, for choosing me even though I'm nobody." Jasper's arm wrapped around her, shoulders pulling her closer. You are not nobody. You are Sarah Ashwood, daughter of a respected beta, mate to the Alpha King, and the strongest woman I've ever met." His voice was fierce. "You survived years of being treated as less than you are, and you did not break. That is not nobody. That is extraordinary. I don't feel extraordinary. You will." His certainty was absolute. "Give it time. Let me show you how extraordinary you are. Let me give you the life you deserve." Sarah closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was real, that the mate bond wasn't a cruel joke, that Jasper meant every word he said, that her life was actually about to change for the better. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now we go home," Jasper said simply. "To the palace, where you'll have your own suite of rooms until you're ready to share mine, where you'll meet the pack, learn what it means to be Luna Queen, and take your place at my side, where you'll be protected and valued and loved as you always should have been." "Loved?" Sarah looked up at him, searching his face. "The bond guarantees compatibility," Jasper said, echoing his earlier words. "But I can already feel that what's between us will grow into something more. You're brave and clever and kind, despite everything you've been through. You didn't hesitate to accept me, even though I came crashing into your life like a force of nature. And when I kissed you—" His eyes darkened with an emotion that made her breath catch. "When I kissed you, it felt like finally breathing after a lifetime underwater." Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. "I felt it too." "Then we'll build on that." Jasper pressed a kiss to her temple, gentle and reverent. "One day at a time. No pressure, no rush. We have the rest of our lives to figure this out." The carriage rolled on through the night, carrying them toward the palace and the future waiting there. Sarah let herself relax into Jasper's embrace. Let herself trust in the bond and in the Alpha who'd torn through a door to reach her. In breaking down that door, he'd freed her from more than just a cellar. He'd freed her from a life of being invisible, of being nobody. And as the palace lights appeared in the distance, a sprawling complex of towers and courtyards that gleamed like a jewel in the moonlight, Sarah allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she was finally on her way to becoming someone. Someone who mattered, someone who was loved, someone who was exactly where she was meant to be. The palace gardens were in full bloom, roses and honeysuckle creating a riot of color and scent. Sarah walked the path she'd come to know by heart in the past 3 months, nodding to guards who now greeted her with genuine warmth rather than formal distance. Being Queen, Luna Queen, as the title went, had been a learning curve steep enough to make her dizzy. But she was managing. More than managing, actually, she was thriving. "There you are," Jasper's voice came from behind her, warm with affection. "I've been looking for you." Sarah turned to find her mate approaching, still in his formal council clothes, but with his jacket removed and his sleeves rolled up. Even after 3 months, the sight of him still made her breath catch. He was devastatingly handsome, all sharp angles and controlled power, but it was the way he looked at her, like she was the most important thing in his world, that made her heart race. "Council ran late?" she asked, as he pulled her into his arms. Territorial dispute between 2 lesser alphas. Jasper pressed a kiss to her hair, breathing in her scent. "Nothing I couldn't handle, but it took longer than expected. I'm sorry I missed lunch." "It's fine. I had plenty to keep me busy." Sarah gestured toward the palace. "The northern pack, Luna, arrived this morning. I spent the afternoon showing her the treaty documents and negotiating trade agreements." Jasper pulled back, his eyebrows rising. You negotiated treaties without me. You were in council. She was only here for a few hours, and Sarah couldn't quite keep the pride from her voice. I got her to agree to favorable terms on the grain shipments in exchange for priority access to our healers. My brilliant mate. Jasper's smile was radiant. See? I told you that you were extraordinary. Heat flooded Sarah's cheeks even after 3 months of his compliments. I'm just doing my job. You're doing more than your job. You're excelling at it. Jasper's hand settled on her waist, warm through the fabric of her dress. Do you remember 3 months ago when you told me you didn't feel extraordinary? I remember. And do you still feel that way? Sarah considered. 3 months ago, she'd been locked in a cellar, believing she was nobody. Now she was negotiating treaties, mediating pack disputes, and implementing reforms that helped wolves in situations like her own. She'd established a sanctuary, program for orphaned wolves. She'd revised the laws around step-family obligations. She'd made a difference. No, she said softly. I don't feel that way anymore. Good. Jasper leaned down and kissed her, slow and deep and perfect. Because you are extraordinary, Sarah Black River, and I love you. The words still made her heart skip. They'd said them for the first time last week, late at night in his chambers. Their chambers now, since she'd moved in 2 weeks ago. But hearing them in the daylight, in the gardens where anyone could overhear, felt different, felt real and permanent and true. I love you too, she whispered against his lips, even though you did break my stepmother's door. Jasper laughed. That door was the least of what I would have destroyed to get to you. If she'd hidden you somewhere more secure, I would have torn down the entire house. My violent mate, Sarah teased, but she was smiling. Only when someone threatens what's mine. His expression grew serious. I received word from the Border Patrol. Vivian tried to return last week. Sarah's good mood dimmed slightly. What happened? She was turned away as per her exile, but apparently she's been spreading stories in the neighboring territories, claiming that I stole you from your rightful family, that the mate bond was manufactured, that you've bewitched me somehow. And what do we do about that? Nothing. Jasper's voice was firm. Let her talk. Anyone who knows the truth will dismiss her claims as the bitter ramblings of someone who got caught breaking sacred law, and anyone who believes her. He shrugged. Well, they weren't our allies to begin with. I don't want her causing problems for the pack, Sarah said quietly. She won't. I've made sure of that. Jasper cupped her face in his hands. You are my mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. No one can take that from us. The protective fury in his voice made her wolf purr. She wasn't used to having someone fight for her, defend her, stand at her side as an equal partner. I'm glad you broke down that door, she said suddenly. Oh? Jasper's eyebrows rose. Because if you hadn't, I'd still be invisible. Sarah rose up on her toes and kissed him. You freed me from more than just a cellar that night. You showed me I was worth fighting for, worth choosing, worth loving. You always were, Jasper said fiercely. Even before I knew you existed, you were worth all of that and more. Your stepmother was a fool not to see it. Her loss is my gain. Sarah smiled. Because now I have you and a palace full of wolves who actually see me, and a purpose that makes me want to get up every morning. I have everything I never knew I needed. Jasper rested his forehead against hers. I waited a long time for my mate. Long enough that I'd started to think perhaps the moon goddess had forgotten me. And then I felt you calling through the bond, terrified and alone. His jaw clenched. It nearly drove me mad. But when I finally got to you, when I saw your face, I knew instantly that you were worth the wait. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other and the mate bond that had brought them together. Around them, the garden bloomed with new life, a perfect mirror for what they'd built together over the past 3 months. A relationship based not just on the bond, but on genuine care and respect and growing love. "Come," Jasper said finally. "Dinner is almost ready, and I have something to show you afterward." Another surprise? Sarah let him tuck her hand into the crook of his elbow. "A gift, actually. I had it commissioned right after the mating ceremony." His smile turned mysterious. "I think you'll like it." As they walked back toward the palace, Sarah caught her reflection in one of the garden's decorative mirrors. She barely recognized herself. Gone was the scared, downtrodden girl in the dusty dress. In her place stood a woman in elegant robes, with her head held high and confidence in her bearing. Luna Queen Sarah Blackriver, mate to the Alpha King. Exactly where she was meant to be. And it had all started with a locked door, a desperate prayer through a mate bond, and an alpha who'd refused to accept anyone but his true mate. Sometimes destiny needed a little help breaking through, and sometimes that help came in the form of a furious Alpha King who'd tear down doors to reach what was his, and in doing so, he'd freed them both,